Dystopia warning, obviously. Quick question for you. Are you aware that there's a COVID inquiry happening in England at the moment? Judging by the complete media blackout, I wouldn't be surprised if you're not aware. When you type COVID inquiry into Google, the only responses that come up for the first page are about the Scottish COVID inquiry. The BBC is broadcasting the inquiry daily without comment though. There's no journalistic analysis or breakdown of what's happening in that COVID inquiry on the BBC, on Channel 4, on ITV News, on Sky News. The Scottish COVID inquiry, a completely different matter. Now, I first started making content in the depths of lockdown during the COVID pandemic to process my own grief and my own trauma during one of the most horrific times of my life. But at that time, not even I imagined that they would be partying whilst this was all going on. Back then, not even I thought that they would set up VIP lanes in order to filter lucrative multi-million pound contracts to their friends and their donors for PPE that was unusable, which resulted in our NHS staff dying, only for there to be no criminal convictions whatsoever, A, for their negligence and their corruption, or B, for people like Michelle Mone, who got to swan off in her yacht and face no criminal charges. When Partygate broke, I thought, oh my God, they're going to prison. Fuck all happened. And the police were there around the clock. They were there 24/7, protection officers. There's CCTV in Downing Street, and what, a £50 fine for one or two of the events when there were packed out parties in that place. Most days, actually, yeah. This was one of the most damning clips from the dramatised documentary Partygate.
Sue Gray doesn't say what happened next, so we don't know what the police officer did or said, but officers from the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Unit were here at Downing Street 24 hours a day, all through the lockdowns. And it is believed that there's CCTV cameras inside Downing Street, and there is evidence that Sue Gray gave the police over 300 photographs from the various parties.
Do you know there's people out there at the moment not knowing how they're going to pay off 10 grand fines for organising an outdoor snowball fight once? That clip proves unreservedly that there's not just one rule for them and another for the rest of us, there's an entirely different law. As if we needed any more proof that we can't trust the people that are supposed to be there to uphold the law, to deal with severe corruption and law breaking from the people that make the laws. So a few snippets that I've managed to find from the COVID inquiry so far relates to Rishi Sunak, actually. Yeah, he was referred to as Dr. Death in a WhatsApp chat with epidemiologists. His old phone number was apparently leaked online, according to reports broken by, of all people, The Sun. And why is this relevant? Because he's refused to hand over his WhatsApp messages saying that that phone is no longer operational. Really. He's claimed that he doesn't have any messages from that time period whatsoever. I'd say this was always the plan all along for them. Firstly, one of the first rules of crisis management is that you do not conduct business over WhatsApp. You have to go through the correct channels so that minutes can be taken, so that there's a clear and accurate record of what the government did and did not do. Now, I can judge or ascertain from the refusal or the reluctance to hand over vital information that they knew that there would be an inquiry in the future into their behaviour, and they took the steps to avoid any form of accountability for it. Another important thing to note about the COVID inquiry is that Simon Case, you remember that guy, the guy that sent out the bring your own booze emails to arrange parties at number 10 during lockdown? Well, he's apparently too sick to attend the COVID inquiry. So what have we got so far? The dog ate my homework and I'm too sick to attend class. That's what we're getting from the people that are supposed to be in control of running our country. Now, Mr. Sunak is very happy to try and put distance between himself and the old Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, despite the fact that he was more than happy to serve as a Chancellor in Johnson's government. Anyone that was happy to serve in Johnson's government has forfeited any claim that they're moral, decent or professional. One of the government's chief scientific advisors referred to Rishi Sunak as Dr. Death due to his Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which shot infections through the roof. Now, the discussion took place between Professor Dame Angela McLean and Professor John Edmonds. The messages were exchanged shortly after Sunak launched his Eat Out to Kill Your Nan scheme, right? But the government seemed to favour the advice of Carl Hennigan, who they referred to in this exchange as a fuckwit due to errors in the statistics. Now, John Edmonds gives you a really solid understanding of why the government might not want the media to report on the COVID inquiry. Here's a clip from what he said earlier this week.
We explained on the 20th with the Prime Minister, I said the decision isn't to lock down or not. The decision is either you do it now and get on top of this epidemic and control the epidemic, or you let it control you. And it will force you into a lockdown at a later date when you'll have to lock down harder and longer, and many people will die as a consequence. And unfortunately, that is what happened. Over that autumn, from around 20 to 25,000 people died. And there is, some would have done, but there's no reason for that number of people to have died.
And to put things into context, one of those people that probably wouldn't be named in the official figures is my friend who, barely 31, hung himself because he couldn't handle the longer, harder lockdowns. People's mental health couldn't take it. And this is why, one of the many, many reasons why, I genuinely have no idea how Westminster's still standing considering what they've done. There's no justice. This inquiry won't provide any justice. There's still idiots out there going, oh, it's just a bit of cake. Just a bit of cake, was it? This is how long it takes to scroll down the list of the parties that took place at Downing Street during lockdown, whilst people were unable to see their dying relatives, whilst people were choking to death on their own lung fluid. This is what the people that were making the rules and making the laws were doing. Whilst NHS staff worked around the clock, putting their own lives at risk because there had not yet been any form of vaccine. This is what the Prime Minister and his staff were doing. And the police let them get away with it. Then and afterwards. Another phrase that's thrown about by people with absolutely no idea of what they're talking about is they didn't see it coming. They didn't know. Nobody had any idea how to deal with this. That's bullshit. Exercise Cygnus was a 2016 pandemic preparedness exercise, the findings of which proved that the government was woefully unprepared for a pandemic. My next video is going to show you the full extent to how the government failed the country by refusing to replenish stockpiles and even refusing to properly engage with that exercise. One of the most shocking elements of the exercise is the fact that Jeremy Hunt refuses to make key decisions that are life or death because he found it too uncomfortable. Do you want to know what I find uncomfortable? I find over 200,000 people dead uncomfortable. I also find it uncomfortable that the person in part responsible for it is now being paraded about on television on shows like I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here and Celebrity SAS, trying to rebrand himself. And over 20,000 care home residents died between March and September 2020 during the first wave of the pandemic because they put knowingly positive cases back into care homes. And now he's asking for legal immunity from care home deaths to appear before the COVID inquiry and to add insult to massive fucking injury. Hancock and Johnson are getting the public to fund their defence at the COVID inquiry. Sunak, the government, have signed it off. If this was France, Westminster would no longer exist. And yet here we are, governed by criminals who didn't just kill us off but picked our pockets as we died. They didn't just kill tens of thousands of people, they tap danced on their graves. A whole lot of them should be held in prison. But we all know why they won't, and it wouldn't go far enough anyway, would it?